Hello, everybody. Welcome back to a new episode of Rocket Lab Weekly. This is the 23rd episode. Quite unbelievable. We're closing in on half a year of doing Rocket Lab Weekly. Pretty crazy. And it's so interesting. This week, I felt like it was a very slow week. And when I did the research for this podcast, it turned out that it's a lot that has happened also with Rocket Lab and also with the space industry. So here with us is Dave G, an honorary guest on the show, and my co-host, Matty Capital. So thank you guys for being here.
No problem.
And how has your week been?
Always a great day, man. Always a great day at Matty Capital. I should stop joking about it. But anyway, yeah, it's been fun. I think the thing that I'm trying to prep most for is feel like the market's been going up for 2 more months than I really expected. Generally speaking, you have seasonality almost. You have kind of like a peak and then a trough in every single quarter. And for the past 2 quarters, it really seems like it's just been going up and to the right. So I'm just waiting for hopefully not a very violent, but a slight pullback and ease a little bit of this optimism that I have, because I think we always think we're too smart when the market continues to go up, and so we need a little bit of humility in my life these days. Also,
Yeah, how have you been feeling, Dave?
Pretty good. Yeah, I mean, we were talking previously about my NVIDIA, and it's gone up quite a lot in the past month or so. So I just hopped on at around 550, and yeah, everything's been going good for me.
Nice. I don't know if you guys hear it. It sounds like a fighter jet flying over me.
Oh, I thought that was your private jet coming in to pick you up.
And it's so crazy. Sweden joined NATO like yesterday. And
That's
now
right.
I hear a fighter jet going. So yeah.
Proud to be in them. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I don't know if it's good for us. We've been neutral for like hundreds of years.
Yeah. Crazy.
And it's been really good for this country to stay out of, like, we made a lot of money in World War II staying out of it, and yeah, so no comments. But are all 3 of us Palantir shareholders here? I'm just curious. But you had Palantir at one point.
At one point I did, yeah.
Okay.
A while back.
Okay, anyways, we're enjoying Palantir, you're enjoying NVIDIA. And Rocket Lab is definitely not something that we are enjoying lately. I'm actually curious, what is your thoughts? Because I also think that we should have a pullback. I do think that we are in a bull market, so I don't think that we're going to get a market crash. But how do you think Rocket Lab would react to a market pullback, given that it's so low to begin with going into the market cap?
Yeah, it's tough. I feel like, it'll move with the market, but I don't know. Yeah, maybe not as violently. Like, I think just kind of gradually down to maybe low 4s. I don't know. Depends on the overall market move.
Yeah,
I could see something similar. It's hard to say. It seems like it hasn't really been a stock that has tracked the market very much, right? Because if it was, it'd probably be at the $6 or $7 range, and unfortunately, fortunately for us, actually, I mean, I think about it this way: with every, if you asked me this when we first started this, Vince, so let's go back 6 months, there was still a lot of capital exposure that I think the company had to go through. I think they had, really just started to get into the place where they had the anomaly. Not too long after we started this podcast on a weekly basis, so over the past 6 months, I feel like there's been a lot of milestones that have been hit. We're 6 months closer to Neutron launch. We're getting closer and closer every day to getting more and more,
we're prime. We're prime.
So I think a lot of the capital exposure risk that was there 6 months ago or even 2 years ago is really starting to flush out of the system. Is there still risk? Of course, right? But the bankruptcy risk has really shrunk considerably to me over the past, say, 6 months to a year. And I think that, to me, I feel more convicted that this is a company that will continue to excel going forward. And also, it feels a lot to me like I think what a lot of these companies do is 6 to 12 months before they really start to hit sort of EBITDA profitability or break even, they're always down in the dumps, right? So like you could think about SoFi, which is now kind of starting to kind of have its leg up, Palantir, which is starting to have its leg up, because it's gotten to this place of kind of, and eventually it'll be, okay, well, there's non-GAAP profitability, and people are going to be like, okay, they're still, so what I feel like at the moment for this company, I think it's a blessing because I've seen a lot of the things go really well. And so it's allowed me to continue to invest into the company with pace. And it has allowed me to kind of like, as the company gets less and less exposure to, say, downside risks, has allowed me to add more capital without having to pay for it. And I think it's going to not be that way in the next 12 to 18 months. I think a lot of people are going to have to pay, and the easy money will, I don't want to say the easy money will be shaken out, because I still feel like there's so much opportunity and upside with this organization. But I feel like I definitely have been early. I'm one of those people that is generally early in my investments. I'm more happy to be early than I am happy to be late. But I think this is one of those things where within the next 6 to 12 months, we'll really start to see what these guys are made of. And by the end of the year, I'm very confident they'll have a rocket on the pad for Neutron. And then it'll be really off to the races. But to me, back to the actual question of what do I think? Yeah, I agree with Dave. I wouldn't be surprised if it dips back into the high threes again as well. But, I welcome it because I'm more of looking out to what the next 10 years holds for the company rather than the next 6 to 12 months. I think right now everybody's hating on the stock because they have the ability to. And I think in 12 months, they won't have the ability to because of where we're going.
Yeah, this is so weird. I don't consider myself the most experienced investor. You guys have a much longer track record of investing than me. But what I've definitely seen is somehow, like when the stock price is down, the companies and management get a lot of hate. And then the same companies and management are geniuses when the stock price is on a rapid rise. So that's just something that is very interesting and funny to me. So, for example, on Palantir, people were talking about dividing up the company into government and commercial, and how Alex Karp needs to be removed as a CEO and so forth and so forth. And now that the stock 3x'd, the same CEO is a rock star CEO who is legendary and visionary. And I have a feeling that Elon Musk and Tesla is going to have a similar fate once Tesla turns around, and it's going to be like, he was such a genius buying Twitter, and he's so genius tweeting and getting all this extra attention. And yeah, we're just not there yet.
I mean, we'll see. I don't know. The negativity around him is pretty extreme. But I think in Peter's case, I don't think he's ever really, people have never really been that down on him, even when the stock has, crashed. I mean, there was some people a little upset when he sold some shares for his charity, but other than that, yeah.
Just for perspective. So if you have one investment and it's been 15 years you have been in that investment, and you're like, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of % up, and you have your family, wife, kids, wouldn't you take some off the table? Like, can you blame the guy?
Oh, I didn't blame him, but yeah.
Yeah, I personally don't as well. But I think it's interesting. You're starting to see a lot more, I would say, organized hit pieces with on Rocket Lab and Peter Beck and how they're how I see more and more people being like just blanketly having the statement of, well, it's not SpaceX, so how could it succeed, right? So things like that where they kind of just shove it off, and I think it's a lack of actually doing their due diligence and more of like, okay, I'm going to make this statement. I want you to rebuttal me. And, I've been fighting that for 2 to 3 years. Well, I guess 2 years, because I guess it went public, October 2021 via Vector Acquisition Group. So it's like, it's interesting in that respect. And I think a lot of people just make these blatant statements, and they said the same thing about Palantir, and they say things like that about a lot of companies, but maybe it's my bias of continuing to do the due diligence that I think is appropriate and being convinced as to the company's ability to execute. And there's always black swan events that can happen, but I think a lot of the things that I see from people out there that are unwilling to look at the company is more out of ignorance. Why wouldn't you invest in SpaceX? It's like, well, first and foremost, you can't. And then second, there's always going to be a number two within the space, right? And they're not actually fighting for the same sort of goals, if you think about it in that perspective. Like if there was only one technology company that rules them all, then we wouldn't have a Magnificent Seven, right? So I think that there's a lot of ignorance when some people look at these things, that they don't really just want to do the due diligence, and they'll make a blanket statement like that to kind of make themselves feel a little bit better. But here we are.
Awesome. So let's get to the first news of the week about Rocket Lab. So this week we actually started getting some new contracts, and I want to hear your guys' take on the 2 new contracts. I think that they're not big enough so that we take them separately. So one of them is this award where 15 companies were awarded a 45 million contract that is over 5 years. So here I wasn't sure if it was like each contract, so it's 15 times 45 million, or like the guys are dividing the 45 million on 15 awardees for 5 years. I don't know if any of you know more data on this.
I read it as just 45 total between all those companies, so it's pretty small. Peter did tweet about it. Sounds like from Rocket Lab's perspective, it will basically be a haste launch for NASA. So I would guess that would be like, 8 million or something for them out of the 45. But that's how I read it anyway.
Yeah, I view it as kind of to me, the way I look at it is almost an initial start to a laundry list of future contracts. Whether or not that's true, I don't know, but I think that that's what a lot of these sort of future things are looking like. I think that in the past 5 to 10 years, there was a lot of spreading around of trying to get all these rocket makers or these space system companies to create and do these contracts for NASA and then also other government agencies. And I feel like now they're starting to kind of like hyper focus on a few of the key contributors that have been very successful. And I think that this is one of those contracts that will probably persist over time, right? You might have something that, will happen this segment of years, then you'll have something that happens in the late 2020s, and then something that happens in the early 2030s. So it's one of those, another pieces in the feather of many feathers in the cap of Rocket Lab.
Awesome. And the next one is a bit bigger. I believe this is a ViaSat partnership, and this is an 80 million partnership, but again, it's awarded to 2 companies. And they explained it very, very technical. I believe, Dave, you're pretty good at this thing. Maybe you could explain to us what this is and how you view this contract.
I think I read somewhere that it was in the 40s for what Rocket Lab's getting out of that. I could be wrong, but basically they're providing the spacecraft bus, which is kind of like the body of the satellite, as well as a whole host of things down below. You can see power. So it sounds like they'll be doing reaction wheels, the solar power, and a lot of the satellite. Kind of makes you wonder. I'd like to see the other half of ViaSat, what their side of the value is. But yeah, I mean, it's another contract for space systems. So again, it's like space systems is really just driving the growth of revenue right now.
That we know of, at least. They because they can announce, I don't know, block launches of. We just sold 8 new launches for 2025, and that would also bring a lot of revenue.
Yeah. At this point, though, I don't think Electron will ever catch up to space systems again. I guess maybe with Neutron, they'll try to they'll start to get closer.
Yeah. Cool. Matt, what's your take on this?
I just think it's another contract under the hat. I don't really have too much of a real big opinion. I think it's just delivery as expected.
All right. I wish it was easier to count with these contracts because, many of them, it's like it's very nice numbers, but we don't know how much is going to Rocket Lab. So it's like up to the next earnings call when we get more info on this, I guess. So the next piece of news was a insider selling in Rocket Lab, which usually somehow generates a lot of fear. And by the way, I just want to say we just crossed over 100 people being on this live stream, and that's pretty crazy. So welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. So there was a guy who's I really like this Twitter account, TimX94. I don't know who you are. If you're watching, please reveal yourself. You have, if you want to have really good analysis on Rocket Lab, I strongly recommend that you follow his Twitter account.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. He's a good guy. He's actually been on the Discord server for a while, and I've talked to him a few times and stuff.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, what is your opinion, Dave? We can start with you on this insider sales. And
I mean, it was a great explanation. I don't think my strength has ever been like, reading the 10 Qs and all that kind of stuff and getting all these details. And, I don't have a finance background. So I do regularly see Adam Spice selling. I tried to look into it once before and figure out like how much of this is for taxes that he has to pay for stock-based compensation, how much is him just selling. But this was a great explanation that like the majority of his compensation is stock-based. So the guy still has to live. So of course he's going to sell shares regularly. And I think he also needs to pay taxes on that because it's still income. So.
Yeah. Matt?
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't, they might not necessarily have the benefit of having share-based compensation. I'm fortunate to be in that select few. And the higher you climb in an organization, you'd be surprised at how much your salary actually increases and how much more of it is dependent upon bonuses and share-based compensation like this. But Dave hit it directly on the head, right? If you get $100,000 worth of share-based compensation, and depending on what tax bracket you're in, you're going to have to pay 20 to 30% of that in taxes when it's awarded, right? And unfortunately, that either means that the company sells those shares on your behalf and pays the tax bill through your W-2 if you're in the United States. Who knows? Well, I guess Rocket Lab is technically a United States-based company. They're based in Long Beach. So if that's the case, then it could be auto selling, or he gets awarded all those shares and has to pay those taxes out of pocket, kind of as Dave alluded to. So I think, I'm very familiar with it. It was a very eye-opening experiences for me. When I first started my career, I got a little bit of a taste. I was like, oh, this is so cool. Free shares, free money. And I found out, once they were awarded that it was not free. And next thing you know, 30% of my shares disappeared overnight. So, it's something that I think a lot of people don't recognize because, once again, of the potential ignorance. And I think, not necessarily understanding the whole cycle. So to me, I recognize that these guys get paid the majority of their compensation and share-based compensation. And they have to take the opportunity to sell, and specifically at set times too, right? Because these guys have to sell. They're the part of the people that are preparing the remarks during the quarterly reports, and so it's in a very tracked manner that they have to signal to the market that they're going to sell.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. There's even this rule that they're not allowed to sell, like, I don't know the exact rule, but it's something like 3 weeks before the earnings and then like 1 month after the earnings. So there's like a 6-week window where they have to plan their sales.
Yeah, and I've been in teams before where I've helped prepare quarterly remarks and quarterly data for investor presentations, and for 2 or 3 quarters in a row, I wasn't able to, for that span of time. It's the blackout periods is what we called them. I don't know if that's kind of universal or if that's, but yeah, it's something that is true of a lot of organizations.
Yeah. The only thing I want to add to this is also when they're not just awarded shares, but they're awarded options, then they actually have to buy the stocks from the company. So then they have a strike price where they have the right to buy stocks. and then basically the only way for them to be able to get money is they have to sell shares. And then when they exercise the options, it becomes like a taxable event because they make money on the options, and then they have to sell even more shares. And we have lived through this on Palantir, and there was also a lot of insider sales, especially by the CEO there. And I think that there's nothing to be scared of as long as you can clearly see that the insider sales is for options. Like, it literally doesn't mean anything, because if they wouldn't do it, they would lose out on the shares. So that would actually be quite a bearish sign that they don't want to pay the tax on the shares because they think they're worth less or something. So yeah. All right. Next news of the week is, did I lose it? I prepared something here. It was actually inspired by a tweet from Dave, and that is that Spire Global announced that they will be cash flow positive. Let me see if I'm sharing the right one. So this is their stock price. Boy, I'm not on top of my game today. Okay, so I'll try to chew gum and walk at the same time. So I'll talk about it and I'll try to get it back on the screen. So basically, it's very rare that you have a space company that announces being free cash flow positive. They're still not GAAP positive, but it's another space company that seems to be making it. You know, when this happens, a lot of risk is taken out of the stock. And Dave, I think that you looked into this company quite some. So I want to hear your take on what you think about this, and if this has any possible implications for Rocket Lab.
I mean, I wouldn't say huge implications for Rocket Lab. Obviously, it's nice for Spire. They're a Earth observation company. I believe they're more like synthetic aperture radar. So like not the optical visual wavelength, but yeah, they had a rough run as well when they went public via SPAC, like basically everyone did. And for a while, it seemed like Planet Labs was the leader in Earth observation, and then it was kind of maybe Black Sky. But lately, Spire has outperformed them considerably. They've got like a 69% return on a 1-year basis, so pretty good. And yeah, it's nice to see a new space company succeeding, looking like they're going to go cash flow positive. And you know, they're not all the SPACs are going bust here.
Exactly. You're not doomed if you're in the space industry. That's
yeah. I mean, I don't want to talk too soon. You never know, I guess. But they look like they've definitely been going in the right direction on their last few.
Look at this rally that they had since what is it, November last year. It's pretty rip your face off rally from what is it, 3 to 14.
Yeah.
And you would like, just looking here, you're like, oh, they're so overvalued, and then you zoom out and then you see that they IPO'd like at $80. Like, they have to go 8x up from this point to just hit the IPO price.
I think there may have been a reverse split at some point. So
yeah,
I think that 80 was 10.
Yes.
Or something.
Yeah. Did any of you, Matt, have you looked into this company before?
I've looked at Spire. I mean, they've launched through Electron before, same with Black Sky, same with Varda, a lot of those small companies. And so it's just nice to see that, you know, you're getting to a place where you have customers that will be around for the long term. And that's kind of the fear that I have for a lot of these organizations that are doing things right now, like Varda, for example, had, let's just say, the reentry not go well and things go in the right direction. That might mean that we lose, you know, 1 or 2 slots on Electron a year, right? And you're going to struggle to potentially find people to fill that capacity. So to me, seeing Black Sky getting close to EBITDA positive, Redwire, all these other companies starting to get closer to EBITDA positive is good news, because obviously they utilize Electron and potentially components from the Space Systems Space Systems organizations at Rocket Lab to do their work.
Yeah. This is their beautiful chart that they have shared. Their top line is growing like this. And then this is like their adjusted EBITDA, which basically the way I translate it is that they are cash flow positive over the zero line. And then I think because they back out stock-based compensation and maybe they don't back out capex, but you can see all the lines are very close to break even. The trend is fantastic. There is another chart that they show here, which I think for Rocket Lab Space Systems is very interesting. This is because basically they deploy assets in orbit, and then they're showing the red line that you see is the cumulative spending on the assets. So that's like, the way I understand it is that's before they launch the asset. And it takes them 7 quarters to launch an asset where you have, peak spending. And after that, once the assets are in space, it almost doesn't cost them anything, whereas the income just continues to go up and up and up. So this is also something that I guess Rocket Lab will have to deal with when they do their own space infrastructure. And I think that it will cost quite some money. And in my opinion, it could be that they need to raise money for it at the time when Rocket Lab gets to it. But now I'm jumping the gun very much on this.
Yeah, I kind of had a question. I don't know how structured this is. I guess I can just throw in questions anywhere.
Yes.
So you're talking about, this kind of chart. I'd been thinking about Rocket Lab lately in terms of their own constellation and how much money it would take to get going, and kind of as you can see here, like the lag on making money on it. So theoretically, like, let's say they're profitable on Neutron, profitable on Electron, but now they're pivoting to building out their own satellites and launching them themselves. There's a lot of delay there between when you start to get paid. So do you think that could push out the stock moving even further? Because every time you think they'll be profitable, maybe they just reinvest back into their constellation.
Matt, you can go ahead and give your thoughts on this if you want to.
Sorry, I just want to clarify the question. Are you fearful of the capital spend that they might go into?
Yeah, maybe they just start spending. And obviously, if they're building a satellite and then they're getting recurring revenue over time, eventually they don't get paid up front for it. So that delays potentially profitability.
Yeah, I could see that. That's a good point. I mean, because right now, at least from what we've heard about from the Spice interview that he did at TD Cohen and then subsequent things that he followed up with in the fourth quarter earnings call, he kind of stated the big hump of capital expenditure is going to be, the past year, and then kind of coming to a peak this year, about 100 million, and then hopefully tail off once they get the first or second Neutron into space and they can actually start collecting. And then that capex will kind of more turn into just RevX and hopefully be able to generate a lot more revenue from that. But I see what you're saying. I mean, I think that part of that may or may not be, this is kind of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Speculation, is maybe that is what part of that that capital raise was for. They kind of seem that it is around inorganic capex, and it might be associated with a company like this on the order of 200 or so million, $300 million, where they are able to come to an amicable agreement. Like, is it a Black Sky? Is it a Redwire? Is it a Spire? Something that already has kind of these reoccurring revenue streams and satellites into space that can kind of bolt on. Because you think a lot of these companies will build the satellites and then sell the services, but they don't necessarily have the operating systems or the what's the word I'm looking for? Operation centers like Rocket Lab has in Denver, right? I might not necessarily know entirely, so apologies if kind of my ignorance is showing there. But I think that you're getting to a place where a lot of these companies are starting to get there. Black Sky is not far away from EBITDA positive. This is doing really well. Redwire is starting to look at it. But the problem that I see is that they're all kind of in the 200 to 300 million range in terms of market cap, and you're always going to have to pay a premium to get them. But to answer your question, I mean, instead of dancing around it, I think that there is a possibility that while it might be sort of to a place where we're EBITDA positive going into next year, it kind of has like a flat line, if that makes sense. Because you might, while you still kind of get that EBITDA positive piece, you might still be having a lot of costs associated with R&D, and I guess it depends on how you structure it, right? Is it going to be structured as operating expenditure versus capital expenditure, and how does that actually show up? Because if it's considered operating expenditure, then it's going to impact your EBITDA. But if it's considered capital expenditure, it kind of comes into a line item after that. So I guess it really just depends on when that happens, and where it is on the balance sheet. We talk a lot about that internally at my company as well. Is it operating expenditure to continue revenue, or is it something that you're trying to spend, like kind of like a neutron, where it's a new revenue stream that you're trying to continue to develop into creating a new kind of stream of income? And that there's a distinct difference in how that shows up on EBITDA.
Yeah, if you ask me, I think that it has to do with there's a lot of factors that will play into it, and one of them is, has Starlink IPO'd at that point, and what is their valuation? How are they doing? How are the rest of these companies doing? The reason why I think Starlink is a lot more comparable is because Starlink is being produced by an end-to-end space company, right? Like, they shoot their own rockets and they make their own satellites, whereas Spire, the way I understand it, is they have to buy the satellites and then they have to buy launches, right? So if Rocket Lab would decide to go into their business, they could destroy Spire in zero time. Like, they would be very disruptive to them because they have all the cost advantages on their side. So I think that if we have low interest rates, a risk on market, if we have had a few EBITDA positive, where you can clearly see that Rocket Lab is positive with or without this investment into space infrastructure, and then the space infrastructure, they look at Starlink and they're like, okay, their valuation is this, and we can very easily add that valuation back into Rocket Lab, then I think it doesn't really affect the stock price. If we go into this with high interest rates, the space stocks are still not popular, all these satellites companies are having issues, then I think it's going to be quite tough for the stock price. And also raising capital if they need to raise capital for this.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So, and by the way, if anybody wants to look into this Spire, it's definitely worth to look. I mean, their price to sales is 2.65, whereas Rocket Lab is in the tens. And I mean, if the stock price doesn't go up, then the current, or what is it, the forward price to sales is going to be like 5. They do seem to have, I looked at their balance sheet, and I think they will need to raise capital. Like, they don't have a lot of cash, but obviously if they're not burning cash anymore, then maybe they have more avenues open to them. But yeah, it's worth a look.
I think before you make that judgment, Vince, it's prudent to take the opportunity to wait for the 1Q earnings call to come in, because we should have an influx of close to $200 or so million based off the most recent convertible debt offering, right? And that's not inclusive of the fourth quarter, right? This is on a lag if you think about it in that perspective, right? So this wasn't this was done, and this fourth quarter piece is done prior to this is Spire, but even still, going back to your comment about Rocket Lab having to raise capital.
No. I meant Spire needs to raise.
Got it. I was confused.
Yeah. No problem. But you see, like, my comment is not a buy recommendation. I didn't do it. I didn't even. Did they do a convertible offering, or you meant Rocket Lab did a convertible offering?
I thought you were, when you pulled this up, you were referring to Rocket Lab's balance sheet and cash. That's my because we kind of went from Spire talking to then Rocket Lab's constellation, which is, I'm not intelligent to switch around conversations as quick as you guys are.
All right. So that's enough for Spire. Let's go on to more space news. So we have a Starship flight imminent. We don't know when. It's supposed to be happening in March. Do you guys think it's good, bad for us as Rocket Lab shareholders? Are you excited for this? Are we live streaming this together? What are your thoughts?
I'm excited. It's going to be, no matter how it turns out, it'll be really exciting. I expect it to get to orbit this time. And yeah, I told myself from the beginning with Rocket Lab, if I ever am in a place where I only see Rocket Lab being successful if SpaceX fails at something they're trying to accomplish, then that's when I need to rethink, because obviously they've had a great history of execution. So they help drive the whole industry forward in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I agree. I think I personally am very bullish on what SpaceX has been able to accomplish, and based off of what we've heard from Spice and Beck and many others at this point, they're almost using SpaceX as like a kind of like a big brother that they're trying to chase and keep them on their toes. And I think one of the things that gets me kind of curious about this, and this is all speculation at this point, so just bear with me and give me a little bit of rope, is I'm always kind of curious, though, because SpaceX is private and they don't have this mission towards guaranteeing profitability. Now, of course, you have institutional shareholders or private shareholders that will also hope for a return at some point. Google and many others that I've heard of that are SpaceX investors. The thing that kind of scratches my head is, what is the true goal of SpaceX? And is that goal a profitable goal? Because it kind of gets me to scratch my head. And, I know they made close to $8 billion or so in terms of revenue last year in 2023. And the year before that, they made 4-point-something billion in revenue as well. So on a revenue side, they're continuing to do extremely well. But are they utilizing all of that to then reinvest back in the company just strictly to go to Mars? And we kind of talk about what Dave was referring to with Spire and some of these large capital projects that might not necessarily pay returns or dividends for years down the road. Is that what SpaceX is really going to get themselves into? And will they get themselves into trouble? And that's kind of the fearful thing that I have, is like, I think for at least from what I'm seeing, all of the things that SpaceX has done has been a means to this end, which is to get Starship going and to get us to be a multi-planetary species. And if that's not just me saying that, that's literally come out of Elon's mouth himself. And that's an expensive goal, and you don't have a government agency at this point really subsidizing that. They do partly, right? But it's not like it's okay, the government decides and then we haven't on this bucket of capital. It's like at the end of the day, you have SpaceX's capital and you can subsidize that to an extent, but it kind of gets you to scratch your head. So part of me wonders if these sorts of ventures, while I think are great, I love space exploration, I think it's going to continue to drive the industry forward, makes me scratch my head a little bit about, is that beneficial almost for Rocket Lab to play into this end-to-end space sort of company? Because we have interplanetary missions in terms of understanding and satellites and stuff like that, but to actually move people at the moment towards different planets, I think will help design components and will help provide software, like we are in the Firefly lunar lander for the future, I think in either late this year or early next. But are we actually going to have the ambition to launch people from planet to planet? I could see us launching using the Neutron to the International Space Station, but in terms of trying to that'll be subsidized by NASA, right? This is not necessarily being subsidized by NASA to go to Mars, as far as I'm aware. It's mostly just it could be me being ignorant again, but it's like, I'm just trying to understand at what point do the business plans of Rocket Lab and SpaceX diverge that would give a void for Rocket Lab to come in and fill as they're preoccupied by something else. And that's just kind of like where I don't know. And it's all kind of like in my head as, is this beneficial? Yes, it's beneficial from a planetary perspective and us as a species for Starship to go. It's very emotional for me. I really like seeing those launches. It gets me all fired up. I love all rocket launches, but these ones that are kind of like really frontier are something that's completely, next level for me. But two, it kind of leaves that from a business perspective and how it relates back to me. Does it mean I'm going to get a private jet and an island so I can fly Dave down at some point to the Caribbean because Rocket Lab does so well, I'll fly you over from Sweden, Vince, but I don't know if I'll have that much money. That's a different PJ. You know what I mean? I can handle North America flights, but across the pond, that's a different type of private jet.
All right.
How do you feel about it, Vince? Are you hoping that they fail?
No, definitely not. I think that here all tides. No, how does the saying go? All boats rise in the tide, or however you say it. Like I think SpaceX was the one that opened all the funding to commercial space when they managed the 4th launch of their Falcon 1. And thanks to that, like without that, Rocket Lab would not exist. Many people don't know this, or I don't know, they don't think about it, but it's a truth. And Astra and all the other space companies would not exist without that successful launch. And I think it's definitely going to be competitive between the Neutron and the Starship if they manage to reach the 2 million per launch target. And that is a bit scary. Although I have, gotten a lot of, done some research, and, this 2 million that Elon Musk talks about is fuel cost. And then there is a lot of other costs connected to the rocket. Like you have to amortize the 10 billion or something that I heard that the development cost. And, then there is pad costs, employee costs, so I think it's going to be a very, very long time before the Starship launch is going to be even in the 10 million range. Like what I've heard is that the first launches are probably going to be in the 150 million, like for paid customers. And then it's slowly going to come down to, like I watched the video and somebody said, like, even if they reach like 20 million per launch, it's going to be an unbelievable achievement. And by the way, I just want to say we have had like over 150 people on this live stream now. So that's very special. We never had that many. So that's amazing. I don't have a cowbell like Amit, but
I think just so you're aware, Vince, I think it's a bug with Twitter. I think the Twitter values don't go down. I think it's it used to read how many people have actually
you're just destroying.
You just ruined it.
I'm sorry.
You could have told me after we finish and we go up.
I should have. I'm sorry. At least from what I'm saying, we still have 77 or so people, 79 or so people. So that's still a great accomplishment.
Exactly. All right, and back to do another full circle back to Rocket Lab. We have 2 launches coming very soon from 2 hemispheres. As far as I understand, first launch from Virginia, right? Or have they launched
for this year?
This year?
I don't know if they have ever launched from Virginia.
No, they have.
Okay.
They did.
Okay.
Was it June or July last year? Virginia is for lovers. That was the first flip.
I don't know if they've ever launched a non-haste mission from Virginia, but
no, they definitely have. I'll pull it up in the background. You guys keep chatting.
Okay. So the first one, the all night long mission, is in like 4 days. It's on Wednesday. I hope to be live streaming it. So we see what's going to happen there. Okay. And we are soon getting also an engine test. How do you guys think it's going to go? And
I just want to know if they're going to live stream it, the engine test.
They're going to blow up Stennis, pretty sure. I don't know. Hopefully it goes well.
Do you guys think the stock would get a hit if the test doesn't go well, because that would mean
stock's going to take a hit either way. We're used to it at this point. Yeah,
not wrong.
It's so funny. Someone posted on Twitter like this meme, of like, we sell Rocket Lab. He had like a list of like new contracts, sell, successful launch, sell, like new satellite deployment, sell, bring back this thing, sell, and then I had to repost it, and I was like, it wouldn't be so funny if it wasn't true. Like, it feels like no matter what, Rocket Lab is just going down. Yeah,
they go up on no news, and then they get hit on any news.
Well, I'm trying to remember, like last year it went up, like mid last year it went to like $8 or something like that. And I'm trying to, this is before there was something in like November, December where it bumped up to $7, but like maybe it was 2022 that I'm thinking about, where it went from like $4.50 to $8 in the matter of like a month. And I was like wondering if something was going on like in the background where there's like this big institution that was investing or something. But then nothing happened, and it just slowly came back down towards the end of the year. Anyway.
We can all agree Rocket Lab is one of the most unpredictable stocks that I've ever seen. It's like contrary to any logic how it moves. But yeah.
I think you start to get a sense, though. It's like, okay, launch coming. It's probably going to drop after the launch, even if it's a success. So
I think the only one where it might actually buck the trend is when you have a Neutron launch and it's successful.
Yeah.
I think that after that, I think it might be a little different. But I just want to reiterate what I was pulling up in the background. So I was wrong. But yes, Electron has launched, I think twice or so from Virginia. Electron as well as HASTE. We don't really know much about the HASTE missions, obviously. But the first one was January 24th of 2023, which is a lot earlier than I thought. I thought it was only 6 or 7 months ago. But yeah, January 2023, that was the first Electron launch from Launch Complex 2 and Wallops.
Okay. Now we know this. So in closing, I'm curious because we have had about more than, this is the second week after the Q4 earnings, so we have had quite some time to digest the numbers. How has your valuation changed on Rocket Lab, given the convertible offering and all the data that you have seen in the Q4 earnings? I don't know which one of you wants to go first.
Mine went up a bit, mainly because of the top line growth. So having Electron go up to 35 launches definitely helped a decent amount. Before I was thinking it would we had no guidance beyond like 24. So I was thinking, okay, maybe 26, it'll level off. So that definitely helps. And then Space Systems revenue has grown faster than I expected and faster than I previously forecasted, so that kind of bodes well. So it went up a bit over since the last time I did it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that fourth quarter and 1Q outlook, even though it did come down slightly from what they may have forecasted in the third quarter earnings, still being above 90 million, and I think we're still on track for that. Now, obviously, if this launch that comes up here on Monday or Tuesday next week also gets delayed again, and that pushes, then we might be looking at kind of the mid 80s. But even still, that'll be the largest quarter that we've had at Rocket Lab, and it's getting to a place where the stock has remained so flat. Granted, some peaks in the $7 and $8 range for so long at this point, that like you alluded to, Vince, the price of sales is really getting squeezed from the bottom. Like last year, we were kind of at a 9x price of sales, right? We're at a $2.5 billion market cap. We made about $240 million in terms of revenue. So that gives you about like a 910 price of sales. And then if you look at it this year, we're kind of on pace for 350 to 400. And if we're still hanging out at the $2.5 billion market cap, you're right. I mean, you're going to get squeezed down to a 6x, 5x price to sales. And then when you compare that to, say, a SpaceX, I mean, they're valued right now at about $200 billion, and they're revenue is at about $8.5 billion. So they're at a 20x plus price to sales, and
almost 30.
Yeah, and depending on what it's valued at, if it starts coming in at like 250, which I'm sure it will in the near future in terms of a market cap valuation, then yeah, you're back up to the close to the 30x range. And so it gets me to think, I mean, if you're a number two, you shouldn't be trading at a quarter of the valuation. And so I think if we start to get the recognition and actually realize these $90 million quarters, I think that it's inevitable that the floor price of the stock will continue to kind of trickle up into the $6 or $7 range. And then hopefully once we start getting to the Neutron piece and adding that, $50 million hits on a positive note, hopefully next year we get closer to 600 million in terms of revenue. And if you continue to just say have a price tag of a 10x price to sales, because I don't think we're going to be valued at a premium of say a SpaceX for many years, but let's just say 10x is kind of an appropriate number. And towards the end of this year, you're probably going to be trading it closer to 8 if we're able to kind of realize those $90 million, $95 million quarters. And then hopefully going into next year, if you're getting closer to 6 or so, then hopefully you're going to be trading closer to like $12 or $13. Now, of course, that's without any sort of dilution events. That's assuming the 450 to 500 million shares that are kind of outstanding. So it gets you to think, I mean, as long as the company can execute and nothing truly goes poor with the upcoming, test launches and, or not test launches, rocket firing tests, hot fire tests, and all the tank testing that they still have to do for some of the other stages on the rocket for Neutron, then I think we're in a good spot. We just need to let time do its thing, and the team needs all of our support, and hopefully they'll be able to do their thing as well.
Yeah, I had a similar. I also updated my model, and I even modeled out this what is it called, convertible loan offering, because they gave this chart that if the stock is like at $8, it's zero dilution, and then it was going up the higher the stock was going up. And I took the max dilution, which was 22.9 million shares, and in 2030 the difference that it made, it was like 70 cents, like that the stock was not $20, it was like 1930 or so, like, but it was such a minute change in the valuation with or without those shares that it was ridiculous that we fell 20%. But I guess it's maybe in the algos or something, because SoFi recently announced a very similar convertible offering, also capped call offering, and then they also fell like an insane amount. And as I'm not into SoFi, but as far as I understood, that also didn't make any sense.
Yeah, I took that opportunity. I mean, I'm a minor investor in SoFi, nothing too big. It's probably towards the end of this month. I plan on having a lot more shares of Rocket Lab. So I'm just going to use that amount. It's probably a quarter of the size, if not less, of my Rocket Lab position is. So, but yeah, I think somebody's asking about what my thought is on the price. I mean, price is going to go up, down, sideways, as you kind of alluded to. But I think as long as the company hits the milestones that they're expecting, the hot fire test, getting a Neutron on the pad, getting a successful launch, not even a successful landing, but just a successful launch, then I feel like with all that being stated, you should be close to $15 by the end of the next year. So in 22 months or so, my anticipation is you'll have a very big normalization of the stock. And that's not going to say, you do anything out of the norm, right? That's using a price to sales of 2025 of about 10x. And that's eliminating a lot of capital exposure as well, knowing that you have. So now, of course, if Neutron gets delayed to 27 or anything like that, that's when you would start to take away from that $15 price target. But yeah, if any of you guys have Seeking Alpha, feel free to look up that article that I wrote about a month or two ago on Rocket Lab.
Yeah, cool. And as a very, very last thing in closing, I saw a very interesting video by a creator called Scotto. I don't know if I say his name right. I don't know if you guys also saw that video. It was his take on the Q4 earnings. And we know that they have a secret order, which we think is the Amazon Kuiper satellites and delivering those satellites. But it's to an undisclosed customer. And he went through the backlog and he was like, okay, so the SDA contract is 500 something million, you know, the rocket launches that we have. And then he backed everything out. And then in this 1 million backlog, there was too little left, like unknown for any contract. So he said either this contract is a very small contract and then he doesn't understand why they're saying, like they're fluffing it up, which they normally don't do, or that they're somehow not disclosing this contract in their backlog for whatever reason. And did you guys see that video? And did you, what did you think about it? I'm curious.
Yeah, I think Scott's a smart guy who's been around for a while. So this is my question. Maybe Matt knows more than I do. If a company is under some kind of like non-disclosure agreement, are they allowed to not include a contract in their backlog?
That's also what I was thinking.
So, you know, to try and hide the value, because I don't know, like, if what's legal there, I guess, is my question.
Like towards us as investors, right?
Yeah. Like if Amazon says, okay, we're giving you a $200 million contract for these large reaction wheels for our Kuiper satellites. We don't want anyone to know about it. And we don't even want them to be able to back out of it in your revenue. So we don't want it in showing in your backlog. Is Rocket Lab allowed to do that? Maybe they are. I don't know.
I had the same exact thought because, you know, per the law, like the bookkeeping or the presentation of the company needs to give you the actual financial state of the company, so you as an investor can make a correct decision, right?
Right.
And then if they have a secret $1 billion contract that is in the book that they're not allowed to speak about, that's kind of misleading investors, even though it's misleading us in a good way. Like you end up getting much better than you thought, but maybe a lot of people would be buying if they would know about it,
if they saw the backlog being bigger or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think Rocket Lab is one to, you know, talk up contracts like you kind of mentioned previously, like they're the anti-hype company. So I don't really think they would hype up this big reaction wheel deal if it wasn't real. So and substantial.
Yeah, I don't know.
My only other thought on it was that, you know how like Peter Beck makes a big point about like the contracts being non-cancelable and, you know, like very firm contracts. And I was like, what if this contract is tentative and has like certain milestones before, like if you guys, let's say like we're going to order 2,000 satellites, but first we're ordering 10 and we need to see that you guys deliver them on time and they work as intended. And then if that milestone is passed, then it activates like the next milestone in the contract or something like this. Like that's the only other. But it's definitely weird because when he did the math on the contracts, it's true. Like it's like we know how many rocket launches they have, and then, you know, it's like each rocket launches 8.1 million, and you take that out, and then you take out the SDA contract, then you take out the what else was there?
Globalstar, probably.
Yeah, the Globalstar, exactly. And then there's like too little left that is unknown, you know? And this is supposed to be a quite big contract. So maybe a surprise that is coming in the future.
Who knows? Yeah, definitely. Not a situation I've run into before. I don't have the answer to that one.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything else you guys want to add before we close?
No, just because we were talking about 10Ks earlier. I don't know if I've actually had the opportunity to read through. And, you know, in the very beginning intro, I posted it in the chat here. It basically states that they have the ability to basically launch up to 120 times a year from Launch Complex 1 and 12 launches a year from Launch Complex 2. which I think we've always kind of been thinking about, what they have the ability to do, which I think at the moment they're kind of talking about 30 to 35 launches. But I had seen the number before of like north of 100, and I was like kind of scratching my head because I was like, when did it go from 100 times a year to below 100, closer to a third of that? And so I'm glad I reread the 10K, and it's kind of explicitly stating, and this is from Rocket Lab itself, right? So this is what they submit to the SEC. So they can't lie in this document unless they legitimately have reason to. So it's nice to see that there's potential for 120 launch opportunities in New Zealand and then up to 12 at Wallops. But that also gives me kind of fear, right? Because if from a Wallops perspective, I'm obviously not so fearful of the New Zealand perspective, but I mean, if you're thinking about it, it means that there's going to have to be either an additional site, which obviously is Launch Complex 3 that's being developed for Neutron. But even still, I mean, if you think HASTE is going to be utilized as much as we truly think it will be, it's likely that there's going to have to be additional launch sites within the area. I mean, it's not far-fetched to think, right? Because SpaceX has so many different launch sites that they launch from, right? They launch from Boca Chica, they launch from Fort Lauderdale, they launch from everywhere. So Cape Canaveral, etc. So I'm just kind of curious as to if we're kind of just thinking that these 3 launch pads are really, that's going to be it. Will there be more to come with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the bottleneck from Virginia may be, regulatory in nature and stuff like that, as opposed to the infrastructure in place not being able to support more than 12 launches. So maybe there's some hope they can, utilize the current infrastructure beyond that 12 number. But that's what's so nice about the New Zealand one, and why they have all those launch opportunities, is they don't really have to deal with FAA, I don't believe, and it can just almost launch whenever they want there.
Good thought.
Yeah.
Good point. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, and they also, by the way, got someone posted today an older article from 2023 that they got approval to launch from Australia. So or Australia got an approval, not Rocket Lab, but I guess that Rocket Lab then also has the ability to launch from Australia if it should be needed for them.
By the way, there is an Australian rocket company with a up and coming rocket they're working on. Not
really?
very.
That'd be cool to.
Is it past Rocket Lab employees that founded that company?
I don't know. I think Australia feels left out. They're supposed to be the big brother of New Zealand, and they don't have anything. So
yeah, they're like these damn Kiwis. They're stealing all of our thunder. Do you know what kind of size it is, Dave?
It must be a small rocket. Like nobody starts with like medium or heavy because you don't have the funding for it. So I would imagine it would be, 50 to 500 or something in there kilograms.
I think it's so true what Adam Spice said, that they think that the window of new launch companies is closing, because I think it's so much capital to develop the small rockets, and you can't, like once you have the Starship operational, Neutron, Blue Origin, it's like even to like nobody really makes money on the small rocket, and then you have to burn cash to iterate into a medium-sized rocket, and then you have to burn even more cash to. So I think that window is closing. So I'm surprised every time I hear. I even heard that there is European. I think that there's
several. Yeah, RFA is starting to get pretty close. I think
isn't there a French one called like Baguette? Like they have a rocket that is called Baguette.
Yeah, there was some rocket they're calling Baguette 1, I think.
It's like named after a food.
Yeah. But I think Europe kind of just sees it as like a strategic something they want to be able to launch themselves and have their own European companies do it. So obviously there's the Ariane 6 coming, which is larger, but
yeah. We have a super chat question here, which is very much appreciated, from John Wolf. Do you think they will launch from Europe too in the future? Have you heard anything? And I haven't heard anything, and I think maybe, but as we just said, that there is Europe's homegrown competitors. So we have to see on that front.
Yeah, I think
with their homegrown competitors. Yeah,
I wouldn't hold my breath in the near term, but it's possible. It was kind of asked, I think, on a recent conference call as well.
Yeah. Well, awesome, guys. We have 185 of you. Some of you might be bots, but it's still it's still the highest number we have had on the show. Thank you so much, Dave and Matt. It's always a pleasure to have you guys. And yeah.
93 people right now live. That's awesome.
Don't crush his dreams.
I'm just saying 93 is great. 93 is great.
Power crew.
We have, Power Crew right here. Yeah, thank you so much. How many shares collectively do you all hold?
Oh, Vince probably dwarfs us at this point, I think.
Yeah, I'm broke.
I'm also broke. It's it's a mistake currently, but I have 65,000 unplanned. I wrote a put option that I got exercised on, and I'm like trying to figure out a way how to actually keep these shares.
Yeah, you might not be able to keep them all. I think I have 12,500, 13,000, something like that shares.
So I'm at 9,100 officially right now, and then I have 40 contracts that are currently in the money, like Vince, that I've been kind of rolling over the past few months, and I think we're going to let those expire in the money. So I'll just be at 13,100 or so, and then there's a few other things that I've been thinking about whether or not I'm going to sell to get another 100 or 200 here or there, and I've started to think. I was like, 13,100 is not a very round number, and I like to get to like round numbers personally.
Yeah.
So I'm like, is 15 eventually where I'm going to head to? Or am I going to still climb? I don't know.
Yeah, this is my problem. Is I'm always competitive. So whenever I talk about this stuff with people on the Discord or you guys, I'm always like, oh, I got to catch up. Or even Francisco in a few comments, I'm like, I got to at least catch up to him. But
yeah.
I don't know if it's going to happen.
You see, another problem with Rocket Lab is like the business is getting better and the stock is getting cheaper because, like on Palantir, like I at least, I made my position, I'm happy with it, and the stock is just nicely going up and I don't think about it. It was like a done deal and that's it, But Rocket Lab is like it's like a sexy lady that is getting like rid of more and more of her clothes,
I don't think I've ever thought of a stock that way before.
Yeah. I think people really enjoy when Vince makes the sexy lady comment. He's done it quite a few times, and
has he? Okay.
People enjoy it. But yeah, I'm curious as well. Like, it makes me feel like when I see some of these folks out here, it makes me feel like, do I like, because I'm more of like a risk averse sort of person. And so I don't like my positions getting too big. Like Palantir is currently my largest individual stock position, and that's over $100,000 right now. And I'm sitting here like, man, like even if you think about it, it's got me to a place where it's like, I guess 6 or 7% of my portfolio. And you're like sitting there like, man, some of these people I know have like a third of their money, or Vince probably is a good example of this, has the majority of his money in 2 companies. And I'm over here being like, I don't know, 5%'s a lot. And, I'm like, I'd rather just put my money in the S&P and then just take a little bit of speculative guesses here and there. And I'm like, man, but I feel so convicted in this company where I'm like, am I just being that big of a wuss to just not put as much as I want into it? Because if this thing goes and it goes well, then this could be the first $500,000 individual stock position that I have. And that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of in the middle. So I try to usually keep half in like index funds, whether that's S&P or a broad market index. And then the other half I can do individual stuff with, but it's hard some days, I just want to pull a Vince sometimes and sell it all, go all in.
Yeah, Vince, did you say how much you had, Vince?
Yeah, 65,000 shares.
65. Okay, I wasn't sure if you trimmed it at all.
Yeah, but I want like 25,000 was my original position, and my portfolio sounds crazy every time I listen to you guys saying it, but it's like you have to know that I'm trying to build a concentrated portfolio on, like, probably I will go up to 10 positions, and I'm just not diversifying for diversification's sake. So I had like 100K on the account, and I did a lot of research on Palantir, and then I was like, okay, this is my one position. So money went into Palantir. And then, then I had Tesla also, but then I feel like my thesis broke, so I sold that one. And then now I have Rocket Lab, so 2 positions are done, and now I'm like looking for a new company. But it's hard because, on Rocket Lab, I really hope I can keep the 65, and I can just write covered calls, and maybe they don't get called away. And I'm in the meantime working on maybe sending more money to the broker account. So we see.
I did have one last question. I know we keep delaying, but it's when when Hot Dave is here, you got to take the opportunity, So Dave, you did really. I think you did well. Correct me if I'm wrong here on intuitive machines.
No, I've talked to some people who did, and I followed it. And I was saying I was very close to making a trade on it before the lander happened, just because I thought it was likely to run up, but I didn't end up doing it. So it went from like low 2s to like $10 per share.
Yeah, well, it's retraced down to $5, right?
Yeah,
so I'm kind of which is a little bit more of like what I would expect. So it's like just about a 500 million market cap. I guess my question is you have a lot of interest in other stocks in the space industry as well. Are you looking at initiating a position in Intuitive Machines, Spire, Black Sky, any other companies in the space industry that you're looking at?
Yeah. Intuitive Machines is getting more interesting to me. I have to admit, I was very impressed with how the team executed. I mean, they had a lot of problems on the mission, but they really dealt with it well. I haven't really gone as deep into the financial side of things as I would want to before I'd consider buying. Planet Labs, I do have a small position in still. The growth has really got hit on that company, but I still like the concept of them. And Spire, I didn't have a lot of faith in them before, just because I've looked at so many space companies that are burning capital and they don't have a ton of capital left, and they always seem scary. But like Spire does seem like they're turning a corner, so it's another one I should probably take a closer look at. I think all these companies starting to do better is good for the whole industry, and it makes things more interesting for me. So I think I am going to start making more trades and investments in other space companies as well. At least I hope to.
That's awesome. Vince, do you have an idea as to what your third individual stock position might be?
I must say Tesla is looking very, very sexy. Like it's the fact that, because the valuation, I'm scratching my head on that one. But if you look from the fact that I know that this company is going to be very, very significant in 10, 15 years from now, and like, you kind of know that it always has an overvaluation, and then when you would want to buy when the sentiment is as bad as it can be, and currently you have like Elon Musk being sued left, right, and center. You have like content creators quitting Tesla. You have like so many things hitting the stock at the same time, and it definitely makes me want to look. So I'm very much looking in that direction. I don't have any money to buy, but it doesn't prevent me from looking. And
I'm a Tesla bag holder right now, so I don't want to sell at these prices, but it's been a frustrating year to be a shareholder for sure.
I did want to. Sorry, go ahead, Vince.
No, I just wanted to quickly say that you said a very interesting thing in your video, that it's like from where you bought Tesla to where it is today, you're a very happy shareholder if you don't know what happened between.
Exactly.
But then if you knew that it like went up and it's been like on a downtrend since 3 years, then you're unhappy,
Yeah, it's the psychological thing. If it was just a straight line from where I bought to where it is today, I'm completely happy. But yeah.
I did have a question about the Astra, which we didn't really necessarily talk about.
Yeah, I was I just saw a comment on that, and I was surprised we didn't mention that at all.
I completely forgot about it. But so they went private at 50 cents, which I think a lot of people are kind of scratching their heads about because it was a multi-billion-dollar organization at one point, and now being taken private, I think, for less than 50. I think it was even closer to less than $30 million.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any opinions? Are they going to continue? Are they going to make an exit left? Are they just going to try to make space components and as a private company? How does that bode for Rocket Lab?
I mean, I don't think it really says anything about Rocket Lab. I was kind of disappointed in the board, and I'm like, what are they doing? Because what happened was, first off, the two co-founders, or Kemp and London, made an offer for $1.50 per share. That was a few weeks back. And then I'm like, okay, surely this is going to go through because the company's about to go bankrupt and then it'll be liquidated if it doesn't. And then it seemed like they just sat on it for 3 weeks and nothing happened. And then Kemp and London revised their bid down to 50 cents from $1.50. So like 1/3. And then the board went ahead and accepted that. And I'm like, well, the shareholders kind of seem like they got screwed out there. Like, why didn't you just accept the original offer? Like, there was no path I could see to save the company. Just the value destruction from like 5 billion to 20 million is just insane. But it's also a weird situation, I think, when the CEO has an offer in to buy the company, but he's still running the company. Because like as CEO, you want the value to go as high as possible, I guess. But if you're trying to buy it, you want to get it as cheap as possible, I would imagine. So
right.
Yeah. I mean, the weird thing is, like when I read it, I was like, oh, they went bankrupt, they finished, and I'm like, no, they didn't go bankrupt. Like they're just not traded on the stock market, but they still have the same problems as before, because if you look at their publicly available numbers, like they were burning cash like crazy, and they need to get some sort of financing. And I don't know if going private will help them get this financing, but the story is not really over with them.
That's good. I love to follow it.
Yeah, the drama's kind of fun, but I'm with you guys. It's like kind of a head scratcher. It's like I did think about it because I did hear that 150 kind of comment like 3 or 4 weeks ago, maybe a little bit longer, and I was like, okay, so that's when the stock went from like 30 cents or whatever it was up to $1.60 or $1.70. I was like, congrats to those people that were prudent enough to kind of hold on and at least 5x their money back in a short amount of time. My question is though, is like exactly what you're kind of going after, Vince. Like, is it going to be easier for them to get funding now that they're private? Do you have a lot less overhead due to the fact that you're not a public company anymore? And there's a lot of drag, I think, and a lot of time that goes into being a public company. If you're private, you can maybe focus a little bit more and not have a lot of that auxiliary staff that you unfortunately might have to have from a public company's perspective. So it kind of makes me think a little bit, what are they going to repurpose the facility for? Are they going to make a exit stage left for space and maybe focus more on defense? I don't know. Makes me think a little bit.
I think it's one of those scenarios too, where having that low stock price really hurt them and made it harder for them to raise capital. So, but the overhead of not having to do the quarterly reports and all that probably will help a lot as well.
Yeah, it actually costs quite a lot of money to be a public company.
By the way, I did try to buy puts on that one. Sorry to interrupt, but there was a period of time there where the founders were offering to buy it for 50 cents and the stock was trading for $1.72. And I was like, what is going on here? So clearly it did crash, but my puts never went through. So
that's a bummer.
Yeah.
Davey J. Trader Global.
Not usually.
I guess it's something that you have to get used as an investor, that you will never catch the bottom, you will never sell at the top, and there is all these possibilities. Like when you're looking back, it's like, oh, I could have done this, I could have done that, and it's always going to be like that somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we have a question here by Johnny Wolf. Thank you so much, Johnny. You really don't have to do these super chats, but they're very appreciated. Would you buy Virgin Galactic? I think it could pump if there is a space hype around moon landing. I basically know nothing about Virgin Galactic. So because of that, I'm not looking at it. I could look at it. Maybe I tweet something about it after I've looked at it. But do you guys?
I would not. So I think you probably know they're a space tourism company and they have a vehicle going to, I don't think it's technically orbit.
Oh yeah, they're the ones that have the 8 million in revenue in a quarter with 500 million losses, and they just canceled their current vehicle because it will never be profitable, and their next generation vehicle, the Delta, is supposed to be the one that can be profitable, but it's not coming until like 2026 at some point. So I don't see any catalyst for the stock to go up until that launches, and they're burning so much money. I've personally have no I'd be more likely to buy puts on it, to be completely honest. Sorry, John, if you're a fan of it, but or if you're a shareholder of it.
Yeah.
I think I tweeted on it that they're the financial equivalent of a black hole with the current finances. Yeah. But go ahead.
Yeah, I used to own shares. I'm looking for so I don't misspeak. This was back.
Didn't you say you were conservative?
Well, that was yeah. So
small number of shares, I would think.
Yeah, it was small. So I had bought in January of 2020. It looks like, and I sold for, I guess it was what, $6 a share or so. So technically, I lost money. Lost $900 whole dollars. So basically went bankrupt. Just kidding. But I'm just trying to see if I sold a lot of like covered calls or anything like that and made any money on those to help offset. But to me, it was one of those things where you kind of just need to look at what you're truly investing for. So back when I invested in 2020, they were still pre-launch and they didn't really have much experience in actually going up at the moment, and they had a whole backlog of stuff. Then when it got to the 2022 timeframe, it was a little bit before they had actually launched, but they, unlike Rocket Lab, are not good at executing. And unlike Rocket Lab, they are very prone to bloat, and they kept hiring more and more people, even though they were launching nothing. And I just saw it almost as like this big marketing campaign, to the point where all they do pretty much is keep the balance sheet at about $1 billion in cash by diluting the crap out of the shareholders. And so to me, kind of going back to, now you have a successful product, but it's burning cash like no other, and there's really no end in sight for that. I personally would stay away from it with a 10-foot pole. I sold in 2022.
I did see the comment about buying it more for like the meme stock potential. And personally, I only want to buy a company if I think, the underlying company is good. Maybe I've missed out on some opportunities. Like I certainly didn't make any money on GameStop or any of that kind of stuff. But I just want to believe in the profitability of the underlying company.
Don't mention GameStop here on this. No.
Maddie lost a little bit of money on games.
Okay.
That's okay. I've healed.
Was not aware of that one.
You're good. I don't get hurt. You're fine.
All right, guys. I really enjoyed spending this time with you and with the audience and with the bots. It's been, I think, the best Rocket Lab Weekly so far. And see you guys next week. It's been amazing. Yeah.
Thank you,
everyone.
Take care.
Ciao.